Alright, hold the fucking phone. Alright, hold your horses, everybody. Is no one gonna question how Breaking Bad exists in the Resident Evil universe? No one. Not you? You? Even you? You got nothing? No? Alright, well that's today's review then. I'm done. Goodbye. It's over. See ya. What is up, everybody? Stupid Console Gamer here again, and welcome back to another movie review, this time being on the latest Resident Evil CGI movie, Resident Evil Vendetta. Now, I was super lucky enough to catch a screening of this movie at my local AMC theater since it was one of those special Fathom events kinds of screenings, and I'm very glad that Capcom went out of their way to localize this movie like what they did with the last two CG movies. This is probably the very first Resident Evil CGI movie to be outside of Japanese theaters and into American theaters, and theaters abroad too, for a one-night showing. And I'll be honest, I actually enjoyed watching the movie along with everybody in the theater I was with. Like, I shit you guys not, half the theater was fucking full. It was like full to the fucking brim with hardcore, die-hard Resident Evil fans. So yeah, a lot of people were really excited to see this movie. While I did enjoy watching the movie, I'm actually kind of glad it was a one-night showing only. Resident Evil Vendetta is in no way a big-budget Hollywood film. Period. And legit, I think this movie shouldn't even be in theaters because it just has the worst presentation ever. If you think just for 1 second, just sitting through this entire hour 55-minute movie, you were gonna find some Final Fantasy CG quality animation, sorry, you're not gonna find it in this movie. And if you guys were also looking for some information about the Not a Hero DLC or how Chris ended up in the events of Resident Evil 7, sorry, hate to break it to you again, but you're not gonna find it here either. Even with something as minor as that, I still enjoyed watching the movie like I did in the past with Degeneration and Damnation. It's like they couldn't just find anything edgy to put in their title that started with the D. Resident Evil Vendetta. It's got me shook as fuck. But in all seriousness, it's no news that video game adaptations don't do all that well in the box office, especially with CGI animated based video game adaptations. And you know what? That's probably the best part about Vendetta and the last two CGI movies, is that they're not related to the fucking awful Paul Anderson Resident Evil movies. Another benefit of the CGI movies is how they're all connected with the Resident Evil lore, and they're canon with the Resident Evil games. Vendetta being a straight sequel of Resident Evil 6. Vendetta's story revolves around fan-favorite characters such as Leon Kennedy, Chris Redfield, including the long ass of Rebecca Chambers, as they all team up to take down an international arms dealer, Glenn Arias, as he's hell-bent on revenge and plans to spread his latest bioweapon, the Trigger Virus, which he has total control of and will release it upon New York City. And speaking of Glenn Arias, holy fucking shit, is this guy insane? He's fucking creepy, he's gross, he's fucking insane. Like, you'll know what I mean when you watch the movie, trust me, you'll know what I mean. In regards to the story, I thought it was decent. It was okay since it spiraled right after the events of Resident Evil 6, which, whew, get a tall glass of water and a big bottle of Advil, because that game is going to give you a big fucking headache. Man, I shit way too much on Resident Evil 6. But really, I felt like the key difference between Vendetta and the last two CGI movies was the heavy emphasis on action, and how there was so much wire and gun fu choreography going on. If I could scale Vendetta on a percentage gauge, Vendetta's action would be 70% and the horror element would be 30%. That's it. All that wire fu and gun fu choreography reminded me of John Wick for some odd reason, but it was satisfying. Especially during the third act and the climax of the movie, which was just pure, straight adrenaline pumping action. I think the action set pieces are probably the biggest highlight of the entire movie, even though some set pieces can be corny as hell. I could literally name you one scene that has just stuck for me after seeing the movie in the theaters, and that was probably the corridor scene. I'm not gonna lie, the corridor scene was probably my favorite action set piece throughout this whole entire movie. Like, seriously, you see Leon doing all that John Wick shit, and then just Chris channeling his inner boulder punching power into those zombies. It was pretty fucking great. I mean, it's not all action. There's also some horror tidbits here too. For the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie. I'm telling you guys, the beginning 15 to 20 minutes of this movie is freaking creepy and eerie, since it goes back to like Resident Evil 1 and 2 roots. It's really good. There's a lot of throwbacks and nostalgia that just made it worth the ticket price alone for me. I really wish that horror aspect stuck throughout the whole movie. I think it would have been so pulse pounding, so exhilarating, and just, it would have been the best Resident Evil CGI movie to date, honestly, but of course it switches gears right back to action, which is a bit unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. Wait, did I mention how much violence there was in this movie? Because there's a fucking ton of it. What I also liked about Vendetta was the character relationships, like with Rebecca, Leon, and Chris. It's not just like 50 or 25% of the characters like just being on screen. It's 100% of all these characters, especially with Rebecca Chambers. It's always nice to see an old familiar face come back after so long. We get to see what she's been doing after the events of RE0 and RE1. I like how these characters are dabbling around their own existential crises and the theme of vengeance. And they're always asking themselves questions like, when is this ever gonna end? Like, how long can we keep on doing this? And these characters are at a certain point in their lives where they're just like, enough is enough. I don't think I can do this anymore. So I'm very glad to see that they played with this topic for a little bit. And as a reminder for all of us fans that, you know, these characters aren't going to be around for so long doing this all the time. You know, they have to go at some point. I mean, this can't go on forever. And then probably the biggest what the fuck moment in this entire movie was that Breaking Bad reference. They literally dedicated 2 to 3 minutes of runtime just to talk about that one show. And it was hilarious, I'll admit. I got a good laugh, and almost half the audience in my theater got a good laugh out of it too, so I thought that was a pretty nice touch. And of course, I mentioned some of the gripes I had earlier in the review. I just gotta explain this in depth to you guys. I just gotta get this off my chest and just explain what kind of flaws Resident Evil Vendetta had. The first primary issue is just the CGI for this movie. There's something really off about it. Like, there are other scenes in this movie where it just looks super freaking gorgeous. Like, the textures and the details just pop out at you. And then there are other scenes later in the movie where it just looks plain and drab. Did the animators not have time to render this properly, or were they forced to rush the movie out the door when they were still working on it? If that's the case, then that's pretty disappointing. Not as disappointing as how there was no explanation of how Chris ended up in Blue Umbrella in Resident Evil 7, or how there's no details or information about the Not a Hero DLC. And then my final issue about Resident Evil Vendetta was the amount of plot holes and inconsistencies there were in this movie. Even after I left the theater, it bothered me. There were some things in the story that were half resolved, like how did this event carry over to this event, and how did this certain event carry over to this event. But still, I felt like there was supposed to be more to the story, but I guess you can't fit everything into an hour 55-minute time frame. In conclusion to this review, I do have to say that this movie is definitely worth your time and viewing, and it's also for the hardcore Resident Evil fan that's been waiting for another CGI sequel for a long time, so this one doesn't disappoint even though there are some flaws with it. I do have to say that this is for hardcore Resident Evil fans who have been following the lore since the series' beginning. Don't worry, if you didn't make it on time to watch this movie in the theaters, this movie is also available digitally, and it will also be available in physical formats such as DVD, Blu-ray, and even 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, which will be available next month. So it's definitely worth having in your collection, guys. And the final verdict that I'm giving Resident Evil Vendetta is 3.5 zombies out of 5. I just want to thank you guys for watching my movie review for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it for all of you guys, so thank you again. If you guys like this movie review and you guys want to see more reviews like this, make sure you smash that like button and also subscribe to see more exciting content in the near future. And also comment down below on what your favorite Resident Evil game was and why. Or you could just comment down your thoughts of what you thought about Resident Evil Vendetta. I would love to hear your thoughts about that movie. Until then, thank you for watching my video review on Resident Evil Vendetta, and I'll see you guys next time. Stupid Console Gamer out.